Welcome, everyone, to Tech Daily.AI. I'm your host, David, and with me is our guest, Sophia. Before we begin, you can sponsor this podcast for just $25. Your message will be featured across major platforms like Apple Podcasts, Amazon Music, Spotify, and more. If you're interested, visit techdaily.ai to get started today. So getting right into today's mission, we were looking at government infrastructure and why it basically fails at the most basic levels.
Right, despite all the, grand policy promises we always hear.
Exactly. And we're going to talk about how transitioning from this industrial era bureaucracy to an AI-driven operating model might actually be the only way to clear out decades of procedural bloat.
Yeah, and to really understand why this matters, you have to look at what happens when the basics just completely break down. I mean, think about a woman named Mary in Detroit back in 2002.
Oh, right, the voting story.
Exactly. A political consultant reminded her community group to go vote, and she literally just laughed at him.
I mean, I would too if my streetlights were broken for, 8 years?
8 years. Her streetlights had been completely out for 8 years. Garbage pickup was a total coin toss. And when a home invasion happened on her block, the police took 2 full hours to show up.
2 hours for an active break-in. That is just wow.
Right. So to Mary, voting felt completely useless. The state's basic capacity had failed her on every front.
And it's not just a Detroit problem from 20 years ago, Look at Oakland, California recently. Sure. An intruder breaks into a home, the person calls 911, and they get put on hold.
Yeah, hold music for a 911 call. It's terrifying.
They were on hold for 7 minutes, then disconnected, called back, 3 minutes, disconnected, 5 more minutes on the third try. And the police, they didn't show up for 47 hours.
47 hours, which is just unfathomable for an active intruder call. But the thing is, it's not just that they are understaffed.
Right, I think everyone's immediate reaction is just, oh, they don't have enough officers.
You do assume that, but it forces us to look at what the officers on the payroll are actually doing. In Oakland, estimates suggest they spend 80 to 90% of their time strictly on paperwork.
90%? That is insane.
It really is. Due to a complex history of civic reforms, the department answers to anywhere from 9 to 12 different oversight bodies.
So just, filling out the same form a dozen times.
Pretty much. Manually entering the exact same incident data into a dozen unconnected IT systems. And out in the field, before they can even initiate a pursuit, they have to mentally navigate 19 distinct internal policies.
That cognitive load is impossible. It's like we're driving a car and Congress is in the passenger seat yelling at us to hit the gas, but we are towing 7 tons of steel with the emergency brake completely locked in place.
That is a perfect analogy. The engine is just going to smoke and burn out.
And this brings us to the core issue, which is state capacity. It's basically the government's ability to actually do the things it promises to do.
Like a Maslow's hierarchy of needs for the government. Exactly. If you can't answer 9/11 or fix a streetlight, you can't reach that self-actualization phase, building a utopian green energy grid. You just can't.
So why are we towing that 7 tons of steel? How does a well-intentioned law get this bad on the ground?
Well, Nick Bagley, a legal scholar, calls it the procedure fetish. Lawmakers get so anxious about legitimacy or terrified of a scandal on their watch that they just add more and more procedures to protect themselves.
Let's add another committee or one more safety check.
Right, and high-level laws cascade down and become this incredibly rigid, paralyzing web. Take NEPA, the National Environmental Policy Act.
Okay, yeah.
It started in the 70s as a simple idea. Bureaucrats would just pause maybe once a year, draft a quick document, and check on the environmental impact of their projects.
Just a quick check-in. Sounds totally reasonable.
It does. But today, those reviews have morphed into dense 4,000-page documents per project.
Wow. 4,000 pages.
And they routinely take 4, 5, sometimes 7 years to complete. We literally have vital green energy infrastructure stalled for up to 17 years just waiting on paperwork.
17 years just to build a wind turbine or a solar farm. For the laws that are supposed to save the environment. That is so backwards.
It happens everywhere. The Defense Department's procurement rules, the DoD 5000 series, started at just 7 pages.
7 pages to figure out how the military buys things. That's shockingly brief.
Well, today, that same framework is 20,000 pages long.
20,000, you couldn't even read that in a year.
And the staggering part is the outcome. The assumption is that all those rules yield perfect equipment. But we get ships that are delivered buggy and totally obsolete because the rest of the world innovated while the project was stuck in committee.
But wait, let me push back a little here. I mean, aren't those procedures there for a very good reason? If we just take a machete to regulations, aren't we asking for, rampant corruption or a catastrophic oil spill?
It's a fair question, but it requires us to confront this concept called trade-off denial.
Trade-off denial, okay.
We absolutely need safety checks and anti-fraud measures, but we pretend that adding 50 new steps has a cost of zero. We think more rules just magically equal more safety.
Right, but there's a massive hidden cost.
Exactly. The cost is that the system fundamentally ceases to function in times of need. Look at California during the pandemic. Their unemployment insurance backlog hit 1.3 million people.
Oh man, people were calling their reps panic, just running out of money.
Because the system couldn't scale. And to understand why, look at New Jersey during the same period. They had over 7,000 pages of active unemployment regulations.
Over 7,000 pages just to figure out conditional logic to cut someone a check? That's impossible.
Yeah, human beings cannot process that. It acts like a cancer within the government. And the government completely missed the lessons of the internet era. They just took broken 1970s paper processes and slapped slick websites on top of them.
Right, they didn't actually adopt the agile test and learn frameworks. So how do we fix it now?
We have to leapfrog into the AI era. Human cognitive limits are breached. To visualize this, let's look at San Francisco. They have a municipal code that is 16 million words long.
16 million words. That's absurd.
It is paralyzing. It's so big, city officials didn't even know how many municipal boards and commissions actually existed. A human literally couldn't count them all.
Because no one can read 16 million words manually, so they turned to AI.
Yes. They used a custom open source model from Stanford called STAR, and it's designed specifically not to hallucinate.
So to clarify for everyone listening, this isn't AI like taking over the government, right? It's more like the world's most advanced librarian walking into a hoarder's house and instantly categorizing the trash from the treasure.
That is exactly what it is. It's restricted to only analyzing the official code provided. And STAR was able to accurately map all 144 boards instantly.
And it found a bunch of weird reports too, right?
Yeah, over 520 required reports, including legal mandates for highly paid city workers to spend hours reporting on physical newspaper stands.
Newspaper stands, infrastructure that functionally doesn't even exist anymore.
Precisely. The laws just accreted over decades, and no human had the time to scrape them off. So you use AI as an LLM shredder to cut the dead weight down.
An LLM shredder. I love that.
Mm-hmm.
And this applies to the workforce too, right? Like the state of Maryland having, 4,500 job classifications?
You're right, 4,500 distinct bureaucratic roles. You can't modernize a workforce with human resources mapping that by hand. But AI synthesizes those overlapping roles in seconds.
Which frees up public servants to stop filling out compliance forms and actually do human-centered work.
Exactly. But as we hand over the keys to these powerful tools, we have to establish absolute clarity on the guardrails.
Okay, which brings up the most uncomfortable question, and I'm sure anyone listening is thinking about this. Let's say you're a taxpayer applying for a benefit or, a veteran submitting a disability claim. If you get unfairly rejected by an AI-assisted system, who do you blame? How do you maintain trust with a public that already feels burned by the government?
It is the defining ethical challenge here. The strict rule has to be that AI is a tool, not a decision maker.
Okay, so a human still has to sign off, who can advise, but it can't be the scapegoat.
Absolutely. The moment an administrator says, oh, the computer said no, the system has failed. Just like a judge uses their gut feeling, which is really just pattern matching based on experience, humans must own the decisions they make with AI.
Because we've seen what happens when they deploy automation without accountability, like that horrible software system in Michigan.
Right, the Midas system in 2013. And that wasn't even AI, it was just rigid, flawed, traditional programming. It wrongly accused tens of thousands of citizens of unemployment fraud.
It garnished their wages, pushed people into bankruptcy, all without human oversight.
Yes. The danger isn't artificial intelligence. It's deploying any technology as a shield to avoid accountability. And we also have to remember the political reality of data. An efficient data infrastructure has a dual-use nature.
What do you mean by dual use?
If you untangle data silos, you can use that to implement sweeping climate change initiatives overnight. But that exact same architecture could be used by agencies like ICE for massive scale tracking and profiling.
Oh, wow. So the idea of autocrat-proofing this tech is just a myth.
Completely. The tool is agnostic to morality. Ensuring ethical use means you have to actually engage and win in the political arena.
Plus, sometimes the issue isn't even the tech. We eagerly blame technical limitations when it's really just stubborn politics, like unified tax forms.
Exactly. Normal software from 20 years ago can handle unified tax forms or automatic benefit distribution. We do not need AI for that.
Right, so if the tech has existed for 2 decades, why do we still torture ourselves every April?
Because of a deeply entrenched culture of no across agencies, they refuse to negotiate basic data sharing agreements. They're stuck fighting legal battles over outdated frameworks like the 1974 Privacy Act.
Wow, a law from before the modern internet.
Yeah.
So AI can't fix a human refusal to cooperate.
It really can't.
It really puts it all into a sobering perspective. Restoring trust in government isn't about deploying some magical sci-fi technology. It's about fundamentally delivering on promises.
Getting the basics right.
Right. If a citizen's streetlights have been broken for 8 years, they don't care about a grand vision for the future. AI is just the newest, most necessary tool to clear those 7,000-page roadblocks so public servants can actually serve humans.
Exactly. It's pulling the emergency brake off.
So I want to leave you with a final thought to ponder today. We spend so much time worrying if AI will become smart enough to replace human creativity. But maybe the real practical question is, can AI become organized enough to untangle our human bureaucracy? What if the greatest achievement of artificial intelligence isn't passing the Turing test, but simply making a government form easy enough that you finally trust the system again? Thank you for joining us today. Stay curious, and we'll see you next time.